So good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Muse, and I'm proud to be the Conservative candidate for the beautiful riding of Flamborough, Glanbrook, Grant North. And I have the honor of hosting Pierre Poilivere today for our Canada First announcement. After this lost Liberal decade with costs and crime up and our economy down and under America's thumb, it's clear that Liberals don't deserve a fourth term. It's time to put Canada first for a change. With a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, build homes, unleash our resources, stop crime, and bring home our jobs to stand up to Trump from a position of strength. Pierre Poilivere is the only one who can bring change to Canada. Here to tell you more about our plan, I have the pleasure of introducing Pierre Poilivere, again, the only one who can bring change to Canada.
Thank you very much for that great Hamilton Steeltown welcome. It's great to be here in the Hammer. Of course, as we know, there's an election on Monday, and it comes down to one word: change. Food and housing, change that you are safe on your streets, change so we can bring home our jobs and strength, change to put Canada first. And change is the name of our plan, our election platform for an affordable life, for safe streets, for Canada first, for a change. L'élection s'en vient et il y a un mot clé qui va décider cette élection: le changement. Le changement pour une vie abordable, pour la nourriture et le logement abordable. Le changement pour une vie sécuritaire, le changement pour vrai. C'est ça le choix pour les Canadiens. Après 10 longues années, une décennie perdue des libéraux avec des prix qui sont gonflés, le système d'immigration hors de contrôle, il faut que ça change, et c'est seulement les conservateurs qui vont changer des choses. That's why I'm so happy to have the team that will deliver that change. Ned Couric in Hamilton East, Stony Creek. Dan Muse, Flamborough, Glanbrook. Alexander. Give her a round of applause. She, of course, is the granddaughter of the great Lincoln Alexander, who is the first Black member of Parliament, first Black minister in Canadian history, a great conservative, a towering legend in the Canadian story, and we look forward to her carrying on his wonderful legacy. Hayden Lawrence, Emily Brown, Ron I'd like to thank the many members of the Hamilton Police Association who are joining me today. I would also like to thank, based on last night's news, I don't know if you all heard this news, but it's official. The Toronto Police Union is ready for change and they are endorsing the Conservative plan. It means the world to me to have the support of our most courageous people. The police who put on a uniform and they leave in the morning kissing their kids goodbye knowing that they may not return. They do all of that so that you and I can walk our streets safely. Yesterday, I released a plan for change that will make life more affordable and safe in our country. Change means safe streets, good jobs, powerful paychecks. Change means unleashing our resources so we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the world from a position of strength. Over the next 4 years, my plan will cut $55 billion of bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and liberal waste in order to reduce by 70% the liberal deficit that we will inherit. We learned that Mark Carney's platform was actually written for Justin Trudeau. It was actually, this is not a figure of speech. The platform team with the Liberal Party wrote up a platform in the fall, and they gave it to Trudeau. And then when they switched him out and replaced him with his economic advisor, oh, we got a little cough there. We're okay? All right. I think he was reacting to the deficit. I always like to tell this story of when our little baby boy was born and came out, and little baby Cruz, and he wasn't crying. And of course, that's every parent's worst nightmare. And then the doctor came over and whispered something in his ear. And all of a sudden, a great cry went out, and we were so relieved that he was going to be okay, so we held him in our arms. And afterwards, I walked up to the doctor, and I said, "Doctor, what did you tell our little infant to make him cry ever so much?" He said, "Well, I just told him that his share of the national debt was $90,000. It's about to get a lot bigger under Mark Carney. They took this platform, they wrote it for Trudeau, and then Mark Carney takes the leadership and doesn't bother to write his own plan because his plan has been carried out over the last 5 years while he was Trudeau's economic advisor. So why would he presume to change anything? Well, there is one thing he changed. In addition to all of the spending that Trudeau had already budgeted for, Mark Carney's plan would add $130 billion more. When you take Trudeau's plans and Carney's promises, a fourth Liberal term would mean $250 billion of additional inflationary debt that will drive up food and housing prices even more. In fact, Mark Carney, I've said he's no different than Trudeau. The truth is, he will cost even more than Justin Trudeau. He has phantom numbers he can't explain. Yesterday, he was lashing out at even Liberal economists. Liberal economist Trevor Toome said that Mark Carney's platform is reckless and irresponsible. And Mark Carney arrogantly lashed out, not wanting people to know how much Liberal inflation he would bring if he were to be reelected for a fourth Liberal term. Now, add it all up. Can you afford a fourth Liberal term of $250 billion more inflationary debt? Can you afford that? No. Last Liberal decade. To pay for it all, he would have to raise taxes. There's no question he would reinstate the tax increases Trudeau had planned. He would raise other taxes. Only on others, not on him. He would stash his cash in overseas tax havens. But over the last lost Liberal decade, Canada is heading in the wrong direction, and fast. I don't know if you saw the story this week, but the Liberal government actually published a report about how the country will look in 15 years. Now this is important because what Liberals have been telling you is forget about the last 10 years of Liberal government. Pretend it didn't happen. That was then, this is now, the past is the past, forget about it. Well, what does the future look like? Not according to me, but according to them. Well, they published this report. You know, it'd be nice, frankly, this is a jaw-dropping report to be published by the Government of Canada before the election. Future lies, social mobility in question. This is the Government of Canada's own report. If I had alleged the things in this report, the media would be attacking me as outlandish. But this is what the government says the future has in store on our current trajectory. And I will emphasize that this is their own words. This is what they have to say. I say that many times just so, if the shock value of this report is so massive that you would find it hard to believe the things that they say. The report says that in 2040, more people may struggle to afford rent, bills, and groceries. On housing, in 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many, and inequality between those who rent and those who own has become a key driver of social, economic, and political conflict. The report paints a terrifying picture of national spiral of depression and decline. It forecasts widespread mental health crises, quote, forcing young workers to actually leave the country. If young workers leave Canada, I'm quoting now, it may be harder to pay for the systems that support a growing number of older people. It says that people will lose faith in the Canadian project altogether, and this, the most startling comment of all, that food prices will become so unaffordable on the current path that people may have to start, quote, hunt, fish, and forage on public lands and waterways. Can you imagine in Canada where people are to the point where they can't even go into a grocery store and they actually have to go forage on public lands in order to scrape out an existence? This sounds incredible, like something from a post-apocalyptic television series like The Fallout, The Last of Us, but this is not that. It is a Liberal government forecast. It's not for 100 years from now, it's for 15 years from now. Is that the future that you want for your kids? No! That is not change. That is more of the inflationary spiral the Liberals have brought us over the last decade. And Mark Carney will continue with every single policy he inherits from Justin Trudeau. They might look different, he might use more different buzzwords, but it is exactly the same Liberal agenda. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. After 10 years of Liberal government, predictions about housing shortages, mental health crises, and a loss of hope for many Canadians is already the reality. It's funny, yesterday a CBC post was saying, well, are all of these terrible things in this government report really realistic? Could they really happen in 15 years? And to her credit, another journalist said, well, for a lot of Canadians, that's the way it is now. That's how desperate the situation has already become after 10 years of Liberal government. So the choice of this election could not be clearer. A fourth term, Liberal term, with Mark Carney, whose plan is even more reckless and costly than Justin Trudeau's, or a new Conservative government that will cut waste and bureaucracy, bring down taxes, unleash home building and resource development so that Canadians can afford a good life on a safe street. That's the choice. Nothing has become a more profound symbol of the lost Liberal decade. Nothing more than the homeless encampments that were unheard of before this government took office, but have now become a part of everyday life. The crime that is associated with them, the violence and the fear that is now overtaking our streets because of liberal drug and criminal justice, border and other policies. Violent crime is up 15%, gun crime up a shocking 116%, extortion and auto theft up 357% and 46% respectively. And you are the ones facing it on the front lines, the police officers here with me today, and there are many police officers in this crowd. They're the ones facing it. Here in Hamilton, an innocent young woman was killed waiting for the bus to go to work just the other day. The shot was apparently fired from a passing SUV at another car, but missed and hit her instead. She was a student studying at Mohawk College with her whole life ahead of her. It was a shocking and senseless tragedy. Also this week, the court is hearing closing arguments in the case of two individuals charged with shooting OPP Constable Greg Pierre just 3 years ago. Again, he was a young man, a heroic young man with his entire life ahead of him, a loving son and brother whose loss has left his family and law enforcement with holes in their hearts. Randall McKenzie, one of the accused, had a criminal record a mile long, and as so often the case, he was out on bail for one violent offense when he allegedly committed this crime. Imagine where we would be today. Imagine where Mr. Pierre's family would be today if he had not been released on bail. Imagine if conservative 3 strikes you're out laws were actually in place and he had been locked away. What would have happened? And more importantly, what would not have happened? Sadly, these kinds of tragedies have become all too common in recent years. For the last 10 years, the Liberal government has unleashed this crime with lax laws like C-75, which requires judges release offenders under, quote, the least onerous conditions at the earliest opportunity, a law that Mark Carney has pledged, a Liberal law, Mark Carney has pledged to keep in place. Liberals brought in house arrest, C5, which allows repeat offenders to do their sentences in their living rooms, watching Netflix, able to walk out the door at any time to reoffend. And instead of promising to work with law enforcement to end the crime and chaos, Mark Carney has pledged to keep the Liberal policies in place. He wants to ban hunting rifles rather than banning gun criminals. As Prime Minister, I'll listen to law enforcement and work with them so that together we can reverse the dangerous Liberal crime wave of the last decade and bring home a safe street. Something we took for granted. People in Canada, many communities, it's hard to believe this now, used to leave their doors unlocked, to sleep without their doors unlocked. It was incredible. And now we have a situation where the Toronto Chief of Police has to tell Torontonians, leave your car keys next to the front door so that if someone wants to steal your vehicle, they can safely do it. Just come in and take the keys and leave with the car without hurting anybody. Is this how we keep people safe? You say you give your car to the thief so that he doesn't shoot you? This is insanity. But of course it is what life looks like after this lost Liberal decade. One of the most visible signs of this total meltdown that Liberals admit in their own reports is going to worsen on the current path is the horrible homeless encampments. In Ontario alone, after the lost Liberal decade, there are 1,400 homeless encampments. It is unimaginable. It's like something out of the Great Depression. In Toronto, the number of homeless encampments more than doubled in just 1 year, from 82 in 2023 to 200 today. Homelessness is up 20% since 2018, roughly the time, it's interesting, Mark Carney became the economic advisor in 2020. And what has happened? Homelessness has gone up by 20%. Chronic homelessness up 38%. That is the legacy of this Liberal government. The Liberals promised to eliminate chronic homelessness. Instead, it went through the roof, and now they expect you to believe their promises for a 4th time and a 4th Liberal term. Instead, they've abandoned the vulnerable and condemned them to sidewalks and back alleys. Encampments now fill spaces where children once played and families once gathered. Our public spaces have become a breeding grounds for addiction, violence, human trafficking, and crime. Businesses around parks have been boarded up. Parents are afraid to let their kids cut through parks on their way to school. And for those trapped in these camps, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, our neighbors, they are left to suffer in the cold, to overdose and sometimes to die alone. These are places where half-dead, contorted bodies lie on the ground on the verge of overdose from fentanyl, twisted, their spinal cords twisted from countless hours, hunched over in painful positions that they cannot sense because of the immense power of the poison running through their bodies and their minds. And the Liberals just say, let it continue. In fact, their policy has been to supply even more drugs, more opioids, keep the problem going, and keep an entire apparatus of bureaucracy and interest groups employed, expanding this problem. These homeless encampments are a symbol of everything this last Liberal decade has brought us. Doubling housing costs, out of control food prices, which put people under economic strain, and of course, rampant liberalization of drugs and crime, which allow the chaos to expand. Les libéraux avaient promis d'éliminer l'itinérance chronique. Ils ont plutôt abandonné les personnes vulnérables et les ont condamnées à vivre sur les trottoirs et dans les rues. Les campements envahissent désormais les places et les enfants jouaient où les enfants jouaient auparavant et où les familles se réunissaient en toute sécurité. Nos espaces publics sont devenus des terrains favorables à la dépendance de drogue, à la violence, au trafic de personnes et à la criminalité. Les commerces situés autour des parcs ont été condamnés. Les parents ont peur de laisser leurs enfants passer par les parcs pour se rendre à l'école. Et ceux qui sont prisonniers de ces campements, nos frères, nos sœurs, nos voisins, sont laissés à eux-mêmes dans le froid où ils risquent de mourir d'une surdose seuls. Ce n'est pas la compassion, c'est la cruauté que vivent les gens après 10 longues années des libéraux. Let me be clear, letting these tent cities spread is not compassion, it is chaos. And it is the direct result of Liberals' pro-drug agenda, policies that have legalized hard drugs, pumped toxic narcotics into our streets under the failed banner of safe supply, and then left the victims with no other options. Nothing for treatment, nothing for recovery, no attempt to actually get people off drugs, and no change whatsoever to this policy proposed by Mark Carney, who wants to continue the exact same policies that he advised Justin Trudeau over the last 5 years. A new Conservative government will end the chaos and restore Canada's promise for a change. Public safety. Take back our streets and restore order in our communities. And we will give people that are currently trapped in these awful circumstances a pathway to a better life. A life with a home, with nutritious food, physical exercise, connections to family, a new chance to start over. It's going to be a future of hope to people who come out of these encampments from out of the shadows, they will come into the light and enjoy the Canadian dream, the Canadian promise. And they will have a superpower when they come from these backgrounds. They will have a superpower that they have lived through the worst valleys, and now they can appreciate the summit on which they will enjoy their lives. So our plan is clear. First, we will amend the criminal code to give police legal powers so that they can remove individuals who are a danger to public safety and clear public spaces where access is currently blocked by tents and temporary shelters. No more excuses by politicians claiming they don't have the powers. The powers will be right there in the criminal code. No more paralysis from politically correct liberal politicians who are too afraid to take action. Second, we will provide addiction treatment to 50,000 Canadians. We will return a true housing first model, get people into a home. But if their addiction is the thing preventing them from succeeding in that home, we will get them into addiction treatment. We will treat the problem. We'll offer mental health supports, job training, so police can connect the people in these camps with the care and the housing they need. Third, where appropriate, the occupants will face criminal charges, but We will give judges the power to order the people charged for illegally occupying these public places a simple possession charge that requires they go into treatment. So we're here to give people a way out. If someone is illegally occupying public space, then we will allow judges to give them a sentence of drug treatment that will get them off the poisons that condemned them to that homelessness in the first place. Criminals, where addiction is a factor in their crime, but where their crime requires they do jail time, we will allow judges to make mandatory treatment a part of their prison sentence. And there will be regular drug tests for prisoners, because we know that if someone comes out continually addicted to drugs, they're probably going to re-offend. But if, on the other hand, while they're in prison, they're given treatment, recovery services, and they show that they pass drug tests again and again and again, then their chance at rehabilitation and becoming a successful part of society is much higher. That's how we're going to restore safe streets for a change. That's how we'll bring back hope for a change.
Un nouveau gouvernement conservateur va mettre fin au chaos et va rétablir la promesse du Canada. Les espaces publics doivent être sécuritaires pour tout le monde. On va reprendre le contrôle de nos rues et rétablir l'ordre dans nos communautés pour faire changement. Voici comment on va le faire. Premièrement, on va modifier le code criminel pour donner à la police des pouvoirs juridiques clairs afin qu'elle puisse arrêter les personnes et qui mettent le public en danger et libérer les espaces publics qui sont actuellement bloqués par des tentes et des abris temporaires. Fini les excuses par les politiciens. Deuxièmement, on va fournir un traitement contre la dépendance à 50 000 Canadiens et on va revenir à un modèle qui priorise le logement. Ça signifie pas seulement un toit, mais aussi un soutien réel, notamment des traitements, des services en santé mentale et de la formation professionnelle pour que la police puisse mettre les personnes vivant dans les campements en contact avec des soins et le logement dont ils ont besoin. Troisièmement, au besoin, les cas occupants vont faire l'objet de poursuites criminelles, mais on va donner aux juges le pouvoir d'ordonner aux personnes accusées d'occupation illégale d'espaces dans les espaces publics pour la simple possession de drogue illicite. On va donner l'option aux juges de leur ordonner un traitement contre la drogue. Et pour les criminels plus graves, dont la dépendance est un facteur dans leur crime, on va donner aux juges plus de pouvoir d'ordonner un traitement et des tests de toxicomane à l'intérieur des prisons afin de contrer leur dépendance et maximiser la possibilité de réhabilitation réelle. Comme ça, on va ramener l'espoir pour faire changement, l'espoir que les gens puissent s'échapper et se libérer de ces campements horribles. L'enfer qui bloque leur vie va être remplacé avec l'espoir pour un meilleur avenir, pour faire changement. Finally, we will make it possible for people to afford homes again. Our plan will axe the sales tax on home building, incentivize municipalities to cut their building taxes to knock $100,000 of taxation off the cost of a home. We'll incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development taxes to build 15% more homes per year. We'll allow 300,000 homes to be built on federal lands that are otherwise underused or unused completely. This plan will allow 2.3 million homes, affordable homes, to be built for a change. We're going to make it possible for people to have a place to live. You know, many of the people in these camps, they didn't start off with that life. But what has been happening is because there's absolutely no hope for them. They might be a young person who's working 70 hours a week just to afford the rent and food, not saving up a nickel for a future down payment, no light at the end of the tunnel. So what happens then? Well, they relieve that hopelessness with a dose of the wrong drug. Then they're addicted. Then they're out of their apartment and on the street. We have to reverse the
housing, the liberal housing hell and inflation that has made life so hopeless for so many. We cannot afford another 15 years of liberal inflation and depression. We need a change, and that's why we're here offering that change. This is about more than just cleaning up our sidewalks. It's about bringing back a good life for Canadians, the life that we used to take for granted. A Canada where hard work pays off for a change, where families can raise their children safely for a change, where seniors can walk without fear for a change, where people don't shun our downtowns for a change, where businesses can take down the boards on their windows and open up for serving customers and hiring workers for a change. We can't afford a fourth Liberal term of rising costs, crime, and chaos under the Liberals with the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal advisors. We need a new Conservative government that will change course on crime and common sense laws. We will strengthen our border to keep out illegal drugs and guns, ensure repeat offenders go to jail and never come out. We will restore law and order, putting murderers behind bars. If we're going to bring in life sentences for fentanyl traffickers so that they never come out again. They are mass murderers and they will be treated like mass murderers when I'm Prime Minister. We will shut down the taxpayer-funded drug dens and replace them with wonderful treatment centers filled with hope and excitement for people ready to start their lives. We will give the young men and women caught in this cycle of drugs and despair evidence-based treatment so we can bring our loved ones home drug-free for a change. It's time to stop the crime for a change, end the chaos for a change, put law-abiding Canadians first for a change. That is how we bring hope for a change. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, M. Poilivere. Dans ce contexte où l'État refuse de verser sa juste part d'impôt au Canada et bloque l'accès au contenu de nos médias, les partis politiques ont quand même acheté des milliers de dollars en pub sur leur plateforme plutôt que de soutenir nos médias locaux. Donc, c'est quoi la position des conservateurs face à la loi C-18 qui force les entreprises numériques américaines à indemniser les médias canadiens pour partager leur contenu?
Merci beaucoup. Une bonne question. Après la décennie perdue des libéraux, on ne peut même pas avoir accès aux articles médiatiques sur Facebook et l'Instagram. Les politiques de censure des libéraux ont tué beaucoup de médias, réduit le nombre des médias. Les médias indépendants sont bloqués maintenant de partager leur histoire. Peut-être c'est ça que les libéraux veulent après avoir gonflé l'inflation, le coût du logement, la criminalité dans nos rues. Les libéraux veulent moins des médias. Ils veulent contrôler tout. On ne peut pas permettre un quatrième mandat libéral de l'inflation, de l'inflation immobilière, de criminalité hors de contrôle. Il nous faut que ça change avec un nouveau gouvernement conservateur qui va permettre aux médias de partager leur information aux réseaux sociaux, y compris sur la question d'abordabilité. Nous allons faire changement avec des maisons abordables, l'épicerie abordable, des rues sécuritaires. C'est ça le choix dans les élections. Après une décennie libérale, le coût et la criminalité qui augmentent, est-ce qu'on peut permettre un quatrième mandat? Est-ce que il faut que ça change pour vous donner une belle vie abordable dans les communautés sécuritaires? Merci beaucoup.
In English, please.
Thank you. Yes, look, a great question. It was about how after the lost Liberal decade, many media outlets cannot actually share their information on Facebook and Instagram. This has really attacked our local independent media. And maybe that's the goal with out of control inflation, rising housing costs, crime and chaos in our streets. Liberals are trying to get a fourth term by shutting out that information. Their entire campaign is based on making you forget what happened over the last 10 years of Liberal government and forget what will happen in the next 15 years if you read this report that was just leaked out that says that Canadians will be forced to forage on public lands for food if things continue on the current Liberal track. So it's not surprising that Liberals would want to shut out discussion on that. But a fourth Liberal term is not the answer. What we need is a new Conservative government to bring change. Change so you can afford food and homes. Change so there's safety in your streets. Change so that we have freedom of expression. Thank you very much.
Village Media.
Sorry.
Chris Arnold with Village Media. I would like to actually build on the previous question. You had said previously that your government would cut funding for certain broadcasters and news outlets. I'm wondering if you can commit to not cut funding for local media and local news outlets that depend so much on grants from the government, subsidies from the government.
I can commit to that. I said that in my platform, you can see it there, that we're going to back local independent journalism, including the local journalism initiative. And we're also going to make sure that local media get their fair share of government advertising. It shouldn't only go to the Liberal government's favored media outlets. And you know, the Liberals want censorship to silence people about the doubling of housing costs, the insane rise of food prices, the crime and chaos the Liberals have unleashed in our communities. But that's exactly why we can't afford a fourth Liberal term. It's not just local media that are suffering under the Liberals, it's everybody. It's small businesses, it's shop owners, it's the steel workers here in Hamilton that Mark Harney wants to hit with another carbon tax. But we're not going to let them, you know, their entire strategy is to make Canadians forget about the last 10 years by limiting debate and distracting. And they also want you to forget about the next 15 years if the Liberal policies remain in place. We need strong, independent media so that Canadians get all the information. We need to change. This election really comes down to one word, it's change. Change, change, change. Change so you can afford food, change so you can afford homes, change so that you are safe in your street. This election is about change.
Thank you.
Hi, Brad Hunter, Toronto Sun. My question is, the law and order has been a cornerstone of your platform. One thing I haven't heard a whole lot of is about youthful offenders, particularly given, you know, some 16-year-old kids in the morgue following a shootout with Toronto cops. You know, he pulled first, and but what's the kid doing with the gun? You know, if he survived, was he only going to do 18 months? What do you think should be done with the young offender issue?
There do need to be, thank you very much for your question, and the story that you shared is another tragic result of the lost Liberal decade of lax criminal justice laws, weak borders, and drugs on our streets. You know, our kids are now more vulnerable to gang recruitment than ever before. Their parents are stressed out and exhausted. There's drugs and guns everywhere in our streets that have come in through the porous borders, and there's more poverty. 25% of our people live in poverty after the lost Liberal decade, and so our youth have never been so vulnerable. And I think if we elect Liberals to a fourth Liberal term, it's going to be even worse for our young people. More crime, more danger, more inflation, more malnutrition. But we can't afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change to lock up the criminals, secure the borders, stop drugs, guns, and stolen cars from going through our ports and across our frontiers. We need to give young people a sense of hope and opportunity again. I think one of the things I've noticed about my campaign is how many young people are involved. And it wasn't always the case for conservatives. Well, why is it? Because we're giving young people hope. Hope. To reject a life of crime, knowing that there's something so much better we have in store for them, a job where they can excel, a business that they can start, a community where they will thrive, succeed, a nice home where they'll raise families in the future and give grandchildren to their parents. That is the beautiful future that we have. I call it the Canadian promise. Let's bring it home for a change. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre, Tria Israeli Global News. Canada could be headed into a recession, yet your platform does not account for this uncertainty. How do you justify that?
Well, my platform, when you say it doesn't account for that, can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, part of your platform projects growth based on projects that have yet to happen, by repealing C-69, by having growth with pipelines that could take years. So I just wonder, should you have erred more on the side of caution, given the fact that we're only a few months into a trade war?
Well, listen, first of all, the reason our economy has no growth and has been in a per capita recession for the last 5 years is because of the policies that Mark Carney advised Justin Trudeau's Liberals to implement. They are the reckless ones. And now what is ultimately the most reckless of all is in a period of uncertainty, Mark Carney says he wants to keep all of the spending that Justin Trudeau planned and then stack $130 billion more spending on top of that for a total of $250 billion of extra inflationary debt that will drive up the cost of food and fuel. Now, you ask me, in a period of economic weakness, after the Liberals have been in power for 3 terms, whether it is wise to campaign on economic growth. It's not only wise, it's essential for a change that we grow our economy. We need What would be reckless is to continue with the same Liberal policies. Mr. Carney wants to keep Bill C-69. He wants to keep half of our oil in the ground. He wants to bring in a massive new industrial carbon tax on the steel mills here at Stelco and DeFasco, elsewhere, Algoma and Evraz, to shut down our steel industry with taxes. That is more Liberal recklessness. What is actually responsible is to unleash our resources by repealing the no development law C-69, getting rid of the Liberal energy cap, bringing in the shovel-ready zones that are pre-permitted for construction, incentivizing 2.3 million home builds. All of these projects will put our people to work with powerful paychecks that provide them affordable food and homes for a change. Thank Oui, absolument. C'est nécessaire de répondre en français. Merci.
Donc, est-ce que la question c'était, est-ce que votre plateforme...
Non, j'ai entendu la question. J'ai entendu la question, mais c'est bien apprécié que vous le répétiez. Vous êtes très gentil et je suis très heureux d'y répondre parce que la question c'est, est-ce que c'est responsable de poursuivre la croissance économique pour un changement? Est-ce que c'est ça une politique responsable? Après une décennie libérale, sans aucune croissance, avec une récession en termes par capita des 5 dernières années lorsque M. Carney était le conseiller économique à Justin Trudeau, est-ce que c'est responsable de poursuivre la croissance économique? C'est pas juste responsable, c'est plus essentiel que jamais. Oui, il faut éliminer la loi anti-développement C-69 pour pouvoir bâtir GNL Québec.
C'est nécessaire d'enlever le plafond sur la production d'énergie canadienne. C'est nécessaire d'inciter la construction de 2,3 millions de nouvelles maisons et appartements. C'est nécessaire, maintenant plus que jamais, de couper les taxes sur le travail, la construction de logements, l'industrie et l'énergie canadienne pour emmener les 500 milliards de dollars d'investissement que les libéraux ont expulsés pendant les 10 dernières années. Donc, c'est non pas seulement responsable, c'est nécessaire de poursuivre la croissance économique dans le secteur privé pour faire changement. C'est comme ça qu'on va être fort pour défendre notre pays. C'est comme ça qu'on va livrer un vrai changement pour une vie abordable et sécuritaire pour tous les Canadiens. Merci beaucoup.